Well, at the moment, we are going through the witnesses from Ocean Gate. We had four former employees, and Tuesday in the US, we had Mr. David Lockridge, who is ex-Royal Navy with a wealth of experience. And basically, without quoting him, he said that he felt like being a show pony for the CEO of Ocean Gate. And in 2015 and 2016, he started to see red flags that Ocean Gate was not following a proper engineering process to design the Titan. The Titan is basically a submersible which was designed from an existing submersible whose name is Cyclops. And basically, they replaced the steel pressure hull that was classed up to 500 meters by that carbon fiber hull that was meant to take people down to the Titanic. And unfortunately, that engineering feat was not as successful as the CEO was willing to be.
So in these hearings, have we learnt more about what happened just before the Titan imploded in the moments leading up to the disaster?
We've got a few additional information that we didn't have last year. We learned that the last communication that we had between the Titan and the support ship on the surface was that Titan dropped two weights at roughly 3,000 meters. So when a submersible is dropping two weights, it's basically an emergency recovery procedure that is meant to make the submersible lighter to go back up to the surface. What we don't know yet is what basically triggered that reaction from the crew. Was it something that they had detected in the pressure hull due to the pressure? Was it something in the other systems that were needed to have a proper and safe dive? We don't know that yet.
Ocean Gate brought the Titan on several dives to the Titanic going back to 2021. Were there any safety concerns on these trips?
I think they might have been. They may not have been detected. In layman's term, what we have is a carbon fiber pressure hull. So most submarines nowadays, they've got steel or titanium pressure hulls. And these are homogeneous materials that are elastic. And basically, when you put those submersibles under pressure, the pressure breathes and goes back to its initial state. With carbon fiber, we don't have that. Carbon fiber is a material that works well under tension, but not under compression. And basically, what may have happened, we may have had what we call delamination within the fibers that would have created weaknesses. And with the subsequent dives, those weaknesses may have reached a point that made the hull implode. What we are trying to get from the Marine Board of Investigation is to get those experts from the engineer side in design, but also from the manufacturers to understand what those hulls were capable of. You can have a perfect design, but basically you don't dive with a perfect design. You dive with a manufactured product, which may be very different from your perfect design.
So the hearings are set to run for 2 weeks. Who else are you interested to hear from?
I think we would like to hear from the manufacturers. We would also like to hear from any entities that would have supported Ocean Gate into the verification and validation, so to speak, the testing. We know that Boeing and NASA were meant to be involved in testing. What we don't know yet is to what extent was there any testing. You know, when we test a submarine, we usually try to prove that a pressure hull can withstand a number of cycles, say 10,000 cycles over 30 years for military submarines. What we don't know in the Titan's case is what was the requirement, what was the element of verification and testing that was proved, that was delivered as a proof that it could withstand those dives. As we all know, unfortunately, Titan pressure hull collapsed after a few dives, so there was something utterly wrong in either the design or the manufacturing.
And just lastly, how was the company able to continue operating the Titan given the safety concerns that had allegedly been raised?
It's a good question. There seems to be a loophole in the legislation. according to the US law, but please don't quote me on that, you have to comply with passengers regulations when you are within the territorial waters. But as Titan was diving in international waters, then a waiver was just good enough for any insurance company or passengers to basically go through the loophole. So that was the CO making the passengers believe that they were going into a seaworthy submersible. That was his own responsibility. Passengers did believe him, to unfortunately the fate that they had to undergo.
Eric Fusil, really interesting to talk. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.